Hey, good morning. It's the day after Thanksgiving. Just want to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving with your family and ate good and getting ready for the new year. I'm making a switch. I'm changing it up. I'm changing what I've been doing from the People's Assembly to which was supposed to be a collaborative effort. Collaborative community effort within ailing communities to grow prosperous and sustainable communities. And I'm switching it up to start, my own personal business called Arc Enterprise. It's a wealth development agency. I'll be assisting anybody that's interested in developing individual wealth. I am on the track of doing that in my individual life. I've developed a life planner as well as some wealth development tools that I'll be using for myself, and I don't know if I'll be posting my progress, but I'll definitely be assisting other people that are interested. Before I begin, I wanted to lay down just like my beliefs, my belief system, so everybody know where I stand, and so there won't be any misunderstandings. First, I want to start off with just the belief in God and talk a little bit about religion. It's really important for me because, or I believe just the belief in God and religion are important because how we view God is how we view ourselves and how we view others. And I want to start there. And I know you're like, what does that have to do with wealth? Everything. It has to do everything with wealth. How we view God is how we view ourselves, and how we view, whether we view God as a gracious God or a vindictive God, whether we view God and God's promises for our lives as one being filled with wealth or one being filled with poverty, destitution. It's very important, and a lot of these ideologies are ingrained within us, and so it's important to identify them, address them, and bring them to the surface. So today I want to start with just the view of God, and I want to start with a verse from the Bible, Genesis chapter 3:24, and it talks about. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but just kind of talk about what the story and the message. Genesis chapter 3:24 is after Adam and Eve commits, the first sin, which is God begins to talk about the different consequences of the sin. And in chapter 3, verse 24, God places a flaming sword and cherubim outside of the garden, and so that humanity wouldn't be able to reach everlasting life, or everlasting life within the seat of sin. So we wouldn't live forever in error. And I want to talk about the meaning of the symbolism that's depicted in that verse. The flaming sword, and I wrote about this several times, but doing the video I feel like is much more tangible. The flaming sword is really a depiction of our motivation and drive. The flaming sword alludes to our innate energy. The Vedic culture, and before them the African culture, and the Asian culture knew that there's a life force within us. I believe the Asian culture called it chi. The Vedic culture refers to it as Kundalini energy within us. And the Vedic culture, Vedic meaning deriving from the Indian subcontinent, and the Kundalini is supposedly as it's described, a life force that rests at the base of our spine, and it rests dormant. And how the Vedic culture described it is as a serpent energy, and going back to the Bible verse, the punishment for the serpent that coaxed Eve to eat of the fruit of good and evil, the punishment for the serpent was that the serpent would crawl on his belly. And for those that are familiar with Kundalini yoga, Kundalini energy, the purpose of Kundalini yoga is to raise that subtle energy from the base of your spine, i.e. the pit of your belly, all the way up to the crown of your head. And as this subtle energy crawls up your spinal cord, it releases and awakens certain energies within our own selves. And once this happens, or as this happens, we begin to operate from a different space within our own selves, from a different, we begin to go about life a different way. The verse in chapter 324 talks about man going, or the flaming sword going every which way. Again, it alludes to mankind's drive going every which way other than the way to eternal life. And we've seen that from Babylonian time. And when we talk about Babylon, not talking about just the height of Babylon, but the start of it in Sumeria. Or history's textbooks place the beginning of humanity or civilization in the Babylonian, or civilization, not humanity, but civilization in Sumeria, which is Babylonian territory. And from there we begin to see coinage, we begin to see community civilizations begin to crop up. And that's actually the point I'm wishing to make today. From that time of the start of Babylon all the way up to this time, we've begun to create society in a way that reflected our motivation and drive. And it's been, and we've seen several societies rise and fall, each of them rising and each of them falling in the manner in which they were created. So whatever way or whatever drive or whatever purpose or whatever mode or motive that the civilization was created, we see it rising and falling, or we see it falling as a result of the way in which it was created, or as a result of the faulty logic in which it was created, if I could use that word. And so which brings us to today. We stand at a pivotal time in history to really remake society in a way that leads to eternal life, which unites us with eternity. And in order to do so, we have to go about life in a way prescribed through God. And I speak about this not in a religious basis. I describe religion as mankind's attempt to understand the eternal and unexplainable, and shift to a spiritual standpoint, or not necessarily shift, but become more attuned to a spiritual standpoint of connecting to the God within. I believe there are several different prescriptions of how to do so. I'm going to be prescribing the lifestyle of yoga. And a lot of times when you say yoga, people automatically go to asanas, which are the postures of yoga, which we see, the sun salutations and the different postures which are encouraged to take in order to exercise certain disciplines in certain areas. So if you are a student of yoga, if you're familiar with yoga, person may, or a yoga teacher may prescribe a certain routine or a certain set of asanas or a certain posture to deal with a particular area of focus in life. And that's just one limb of yoga. There are 8 limbs of yoga, and I'm going to be speaking about those as we move about. So I really just wanted to check in, leave you that much, and just say peace, love, and blessings. Yeah, have a good one.